Hi everyone, this is Evan with my tiny workshop. Few tips and tricks that I have learned with my 4000 lathe and milling machine. This is an older model, but what I've done is there is no backlash adjustment on the crank, on the cross feed or the feed in and out. This is a problem. The cranks are only held with a set screw. So if this backs off, you're going to have a lot of backlash on your feeds. So what I've done is I bored the crossfeed screw. I machined small bushings and tapped the crossfeed screw for a 3mm 0.05 screw. This allowed me to loosen the set screw on the crank, tension slightly on these, and then lock down the crank set screw. And I can show you here what I've done. Set screw, my tensioning deal that I made, I can just cinch that slightly just to where there's no backlash, and then lock this down. And I can adjust this at any time very easily. Works amazingly well. Now with a milling machine, on the crossfeed, you have backlash adjustments that take up screw slack into the table, but you do not have anything that takes up slack for the crank. Same thing here. So did the same thing, drilled, tapped, machined a small aluminum bushing, and threaded in a 3mm screw here. This works amazingly well. I was able to take up all backlash and make it still turn perfectly well. And I actually like just a little bit of tension on it, because then I know that there's no slack. As far as this way, it's quite free. I can tension it down more, but I don't feel that I need to, because here I can tighten the ways, and I can tension that to where it will slow down here anyway. With some of it though, you can't. Like here. Yes, you can tension that cross feed. Well, once again, there be all this slack. This isn't slack, this is me actually moving it, but it might be hard to see. You can see it turning one way or the other, and I believe that I have less than 1,000th give on my crank now. Whereas before, it kept slackening up, and that set screw just does not hold. And you can't cut a flat onto the shaft for that set screw to ride into, because if you do, then you can't orient the crank into a position where you've taken up all the slack, and it's not adjustable. So this had to be done this way. I don't see any other way that it could be done. Just with the machine that I am working with. And realizing this is an old Sherline lathe and an old Sherline mill. Maybe the new ones have more options as far as adjustment, but for my machine, this is what I needed to do. I have taken them completely apart, both of them entirely, and there was no other adjustment. But this makes a much more precise machine out of it. I have found that I be able to cut down chatter so immensely by doing this, because you can't control cutting if you don't have precision. This works so well. Something I thought I would share. I'm very intrigued with machining, whether it be with a lathe or a milling machine, and I've done this for a long time. And granted, I am an amateur machinist, but I've made a lot of very cool projects. I will show more in the future. Back to this little vise that I did not make the vise. I will be making vices in the future and sharing videos of that. Once again, though, I upgraded this vise with a cross handle, which seems like a very simple project, except for this stainless screw and knob are hard as can be. I was luckily able to drill a pilot hole with my milling machine, but as soon as this got hot, it work hardened. So at least I was able to do it with a pilot drill to start with, because then I came back with a 532 or 8 millimeter, sorry, 1/18 end mill, and was able to bore it through, which end mills are not intended to be for boring, but if you have a pilot hole already done, then you can do it. Then turn down a piece of hardened rod in the lathe, cut V-grooves into it for O-rings to slip into, just to keep the handle from slipping off. So that was just another little simple project that I did after I took care of getting all the slack out of my machines. After that, works beautifully. Chatter was cut down immensely. This, if you can see, is a very clean cutting process with no final preparation after that or finishing. It just cut that well. Prior to that, it would not. The cutter would just walk back and forth ever so slightly, but enough to disrupt the cut, and it would chatter. Even if I tried different speeds on the machine, turning it up and down, trying different things, it would chatter and leave horrible chatter marks, especially on those long tapers here and here. It was horrible. And my cutters are sharp. They have been freshly sharpened. There are no issues there. And I tried several cutters and same issue arose. So, just a little tip. It's a very simple evening project. If somebody wants to do that to their Sherline. And it certainly doesn't harm the machine, because you're only boring such a small hole. I chose 3mm, realizing that the machine is all fractional or imperial, whichever way you guys want to say it. But I had an entire assortment of 3mm 0.05 screws on hand in all different lengths, and socket cap screws and button head, anything I wanted. And that was plenty good without taking out too much meat out of the shaft. I didn't want to do that. I want to leave that plenty strong. So by doing that, worked just incredibly well. Everything that I've done since has been so much improved. You can do this with this cross feed of your mill. You could do it with it here. I only did it here so far on the milling machine, but I've done it on both directions on the lathe. The milling machine seems to hold pretty good, but look, that right there, that's all slack. Every bit of that is slack. So I see that. So I will be doing that with this. I just haven't gotten to it yet. That'll be my project later today. And it seems worse the more you use it. I mean, look at how much distance it travels with not actually feeding on the table. The rest of the table is perfectly smooth. It runs great, but that's not acceptable if you want to have a precise machine. This is something very important with any machining operation. I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope to be back with you soon, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night.